Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today. I'm Shalini Pillai. I'm the managing partner for KPMG's business in Bangalore, and I lead all of what we do with global capability centers across the country. Over the last 8 months and through this COVID environment, we've seen this model change and evolve very, very significantly. The world around us, our business ecosystem has changed quite dramatically. Global Capability Centers, or as we will refer to them as GCCs for the purposes of this session, have been right at the core of this technology evolution, seeing convergence of technologies enabling global service delivery platforms. And hence we thought this is a subject that was critical to be part of the India Mobile Congress 2020, as we will speak today about how the service delivery models have evolved and continue to evolve. What does that future hold? What does it look like as we get into the world of tomorrow? The world of tomorrow, an extremely exciting space. And we will talk about today as we go through this session on some of those changes. I'm privileged to be joined for this session by some of our industry leaders, veterans who've spent their careers in the telecom sector, leading technology and being at the helm of running some significant transformation in each of their organizations. Let me now introduce the panel members to you. And we are joined today by Johnson Jose, who heads Cisco's APJ IT operations. He's part of the executive leadership team, responsible for IT transformation globally for Cisco's global supply chain. He's also responsible for many aspects of technology, Industry 4.0, IoT, and all of what future tech holds for Cisco's supply chain globally. He also is the co-lead for the India operations and hence brings together a fantastic combination of technology and operations as he talks to us today. We are joined also by Ganesh Vaidyanathan. Ganesh Vaidyanathan is here representing Vodafone Intelligent Solutions. He heads the group's commercial and operations and leads this center. As the name suggests, Vodafone Intelligent Solutions is what is driving transformation and at the helm of cutting-edge solutions that Vodafone Center provides to its global organization. Prior to joining Vodafone, Ganesh was with Ericsson, heading Cloud OSS Adaptation Center, and has been in the tech world for a large part of his career. We are also joined by our senior partner, Purushothaman. We will call him Puru. Puru heads the telecom sector for KPMG. He works with centers across the telecom technology space and will take us through some of his experiences of what the last 8 months have offered. Puru also brings with him some significant technology experience and will talk a little about some of what he has been innovating to adapt to these agile times and the needs of the hour. So with that, folk, we will actually jump right into this session and you will see and hear from our industry leaders some of what they're seeing and experiencing in this space. Thank you again, gentlemen, for joining our discussion today. Let's make this exciting for our audience, giving them as many examples as we can of what we are experiencing in this space. To open this discussion, and I'd love to start with an opening question to all of our panelists, to really talk a little about what they've seen evolve in the Global Capability Center model. How have you seen it really adding value to the parent? Because this is a model that we've seen evolve over 2 decades, from what started off with a simple cost arbitrage model, where very mundane transaction processing areas were really touched upon to save costs, to where it is today. Many of you have seen your centers and you are adding value absolutely at the core, steering the future agenda. So with that, let me kind of invite Johnson, Ganesh, and Puru in that order to just talk a little about the Global Capability Center model and what are you seeing it drive for your parent organization globally. Over to you.
All right, Shalini, this is a privilege collaborating with KPMG and of course with Ganesh from Vodafone. Cisco is very, very happy to be part of this. Now, talking about the GCC model, Cisco started in India back in 1996. just a small center representing our sales organization. And in '99, we decided to go full-fledged with the R&D center, where we started our engineering or the core R&D division, and I joined then in '99 with the R&D center. So the primary intention at that point of time, and that was a time where everybody was looking for cost arbitrage. But Cisco's intention was not cost arbitrage to start with. Our primary focus was our customer and the large base of ecosystem in this region. So India is one of our prominent market, and that was the reason we started our R&D center here. Now, even though we started with an intention of center of excellence, and I want to make it very significant that point.
Mm-hmm.
We originally started it as a center of excellence, and I was in a division where we were focusing on network management, and Bangalore Center was a center of excellence for network management. Bangalore was a center of excellence for BGP as a protocol and things like that. So the center of excellence model was there till 2005, 2006 timeframe. And in 2008, our then CEO, John Chambers, declared that India is going to be our strategic extension from a center of excellence to an extension to our global headquarters, and declared India as the second global headquarters. Mm-hmm. So that is the transformation. From 99 to 2006, 2007 timeframe, we have grown up to 2,000 people. From 2008 till today, we are around 14,000 people, 12,000 to 14,000 permanent, we call the blue badge employees, who are direct employees of Cisco. And then we have an ecosystem of another 30,000 or partners from all the different verticals. So the transformation from a center of excellence to a strategic extension of our global headquarters made a big difference for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
That made us, we grew from R&D, then IT came in, then services came in. Today, Cisco India as representation of all the different verticals as represented in the headquarters. And we do not call ourselves as a center of excellence. Rather, we call ourselves as a center of competency, the same as what we represent in the global headquarters. That is where I want to start. And today we are, like I said, we are represented by all the functions, including marketing and communications. Everything.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thanks for that, Johnson. I'm going to certainly come back to you, because being called extension or a headquarters of the East, if I may, is significant and speaks volumes for what you've accomplished. We will also come back to you on the 30K ecosystem partners you spoke of beyond your 14,000 people, which is another significant enabler we will touch upon today. But thank you for that. Ganesh, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shalini. First of all, it's a privilege and honor for me to be part of this esteemed panel and being part of this IMC event. So thank you so much for this opportunity. So coming to this very important question of GCC, how is it making a difference and how it has evolved over a period of time? I completely agree with what Johnson was saying, and I think I can relate it to the Vodafone shared services journey in a very similar manner. So we all started as a cost arbitrage entity. So Vodafone shared services primarily was set up to support Vodafone Group and Vodafone local markets to support various operations which were onshore at that point of time. So we wanted to bring it offshore and then leverage the cost benefit that comes out of it. So this was like 10, 12 years ago. But over a period of time, we realized based on the scale that we had, based on the availability of skills, based on the maturity of leadership that we have in India and various other centers of voice or the Vodafone shared services. So the Vodafone Group, the parent company, decided to experiment, okay, why don't we move a little bit of more value-added services offshore as well? So when I joined Vodafone Shared Services 4 years ago, I came in to set up the application development service line for shared services, which was never existing at that point of time. Mm-hmm. So till then, the focus was purely on operations, testing, infrastructure. So whichever were called backend kind of services. Then I think the last 4 to 5 years, we were able to set up more and more value added services. And the principles I can relate to, with which I think the global service centers are, the capability centers are evolving at this point of time, of course, is scale at speed. So we, be it any center, whether it is India or Europe or wherever we set up this global capability center, I think the first thing that we are looking at is how can we scale at speed, which is not possible at the parent organization level because of the cost, because of the availability of skills, because of various other dynamics around it, right? The second one today I can think about is, of course, the digital transformation that we bring onto the table. So I think any solution that we put on today, the first thing that we evaluate is, can we automate this? Can we make this 100% digital? Nobody is thinking about, okay, how do I implement this manually and then tomorrow I'll automate, right? So today we are looking at getting into automation, getting into the digital transformation right at the start. And that is where the GCCs are at the hem, are at the pinnacle of the overall ecosystem. The third aspect is, of course, the customer first aspect. So we at the GCCs, wherever it is, whether it is Cisco or Vodafone or so many other GCCs, I think the main focus is the customer, is the end customer. And we bring in that focus. And that is where even today, while we are in a pandemic situation, I think we have delivered beautifully well in terms of not dropping any ball across this 6-8 months of pandemic situation as well. And that is where we were able to play a very critical and pivotal role in the success of GCC. So I think overall, I think we have evolved over a period of time. We have moved up the value chain. And today we are even looking at, okay, how can we fit into the magic quadrant of Gartner? Who is the top leader in things, whether it is IoT, whether it is machine learning or whatever it is, you will see one of the GCCs would be on the top quadrant of the magic quadrant of Gartner's report or any other top report that you have. So that is a big evolution for us. And I'm sure we'll discuss in detail about all these aspects in the coming panel discussion that we have now. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ganesh. Some great points, and fascinating when you say that GCC is looking to be in that magic quadrant, because that speaks volumes for the capabilities that are being built in some of these centers in terms of the technology capability. You made some great points on scaling at a certain pace and speed. You talked about the digital transformation, which we are going to dive in a little more detail. And of course, the whole element of value add, because one hears a lot about it. As we go through this discussion, will be wonderful to hear from both of you, especially on examples of how is this value perceived. You know, value has moved way beyond cost being a lever to looking at very different dimensions, with, of course, the customer being at the pivot. You know, everything pivoting around the customer experience. So we will talk in more detail. Puru, your thoughts from where you see it across much larger spectrums.
Thanks, Shalini, and thanks, Ganesh and Johnson, to set a very nice context. From a business transformation perspective, the way GCCs have evolved is something that Ganesh and Johnson have very articulatively showcased in the last few minutes. The way I looked at things, I've been in the sector for the last 20 years or so, and been working with GCCs in different domains. In fact, TMT can actually boast of creating one of the first few GCCs from a technology perspective, and it's a very nice adoption into telecom as well, with OEMs quickly adopting and delivering, creating global delivery centers out of India. About a decade back, the contracts with customers were undergoing a change where a lot of OEMs and telecom players had to focus on a lot of efficiency into operations. And what they thought was creating a GDC or a GDC kind of an environment will be a priority. So cost was at its forefront, and a lot of contracts that were driven by customers had to be fulfilled by some of the GCCs. And hence, as Ganesh and Johnson also said, the early part of the way TMT looked at it, telecom sector looked at GCCs, was to see if not only be a cost arbitrage, but also be a very large scale delivery center for their parent operations or for their customers around the world. But later on, it evolved. So because you need to deliver to customers, you had to be innovative, and that's where the requirement of research and development capabilities came in. And there are quite a few companies, and Johnson mentioned about Cisco also starting a research and development wing, started coming in. The future, or the way the next wave was about how can the R&D be used for product development, and that's a very important area to focus upon from a GCC perspective, especially considering some of the Make in India initiatives, the change in some of the regulations that have actually come in the later part of 2019, and some of the PLI incentives that have also been announced by the government. That will be the next wave of how GCCs are going to evolve in their next wave of transformation. But to make that happen, there are two important areas that we need to focus upon, which is how do GCCs drive an innovation-led transformation for their parent. And when I say here, transformation does not mean just cost transformation. It is also sales transformation, product transformation, and also solution transformation for their parent organization. 5G is 5G is around the corner, and almost every country that GCCs operate on is going to move into 5G. The way GCCs adapt to the requirements of their counterparts in the respective countries and their customers, and some of the innovation that will have to be driven and the solutions that will have to be created and delivered is very critical, and I'm sure that GCCs will play a bigger role. So for me, the next wave is stronger R&D, more innovation, solutions that are created in India for the global world, and also how do we continue to do more with less? And if you don't innovate, obviously we all will perish, including the GCCs. So that's where that's how I look at it.
Thanks for that, Puru. Some great topics that are a really nice segue into the next set of discussions we're going to have, because with innovation being absolutely at the core, and one has seen the telecom sector, one has seen technology, and we've seen the convergence that has happened in this space. So I'd love to get into the next set of questions, which really are about getting your views on given the context of convergence in the telecom sector, given that one has seen telcos moving away from, I mean, the days of plain vanilla voice data services are kind of behind us. It's about value-added services. It's about technology solutions. It's about how you're adapting and migrating to the cloud. It's all of this coming together. And in fact, we will also get into another element of doing more with less, with all of this digital space, with location getting agnostic. We'll touch upon some other implications of that. But for now, let's focus on the technology aspects. And would love to open this up to Johnson. Maybe you want to go first and give us a quick sense of, you know, given the convergence you're seeing, given the journey you walked us through, what are you seeing as impact on GCCs?
So Ganesh touched upon the digital transformation, and what a good time to talk about it. Everyone was planning for it, and companies have slotted it for next two years to 5 years to do that in their given comfort. But COVID and the given pandemic have pushed everyone to do it, accelerate that cycle.
Yeah.
And that also opened up a lot of collaboration opportunities. If you consider Cisco, we are experimenting a lot of things with our partners, be it Vodafone or be it AT&T. We are looking at how we can bring the digital transformation to our end users, right? And we are a largest cloud infrastructure provider. Now we also said if 2 years back Cisco would have sold a router or a switch as it is. Today we said we are happy to sell you the software. We're happy to sell you the component which you want to make your own white label switch, or we are ready to work with you as a partner, a web scale to the web scale companies and our ISPs as a partner to transform the industry, because we identified the need for a digital transformation, not only for us, but for the industry. So our collaboration, for example, 5G, we are partnering with several of our industry partners on that. Wi-Fi 6 is another thing which we are doing. We're also, like I said, in the white label switching, we changed our strategy from being a closed loop developer to an open world. We said we are happy to provide you the component. If you want to buy component from us, you can. So several of our competitors have become our customers buying component from us, especially in the optical space and the photonic space. So as you go forward, you will see a lot more of this dynamic partnership evolve as the industry need to move together rather than keeping everything under the wrap and saying that we want partners. So that's our stand, is that we are looking forward for so many of this partnership ahead.
That's fantastic. Actually, that's convergence of another sort, where the ecosystem itself is converging. And is that really easy, do you think? Sorry, just to follow on to that, Johnson, because while you maintain your core and you differentiate what a Cisco brings to the table vis-a-vis, you know, the downsides of opening up and partnering, how do you sustain or you kind of tread that fine line?
If you look at that transition, it's one of the toughest transition for us, right? We are trying to move from a from the revenues coming from our fixed asset or the routers and switches and the boxes to a recurring revenue model.
Yeah.
And what will add value to the recurring revenue model is how we change our business model itself. Our
Yeah.
CEO is trying to do that for last 4 or 5 years. That is one of his mandate. And he's been very largely successful. As you can see, the stock price started showing up in a very positive uptrend. That is because we are able to predict our recurring revenues much comfortably now. A lot of things are coming from the software and the service. And you see that we are moving into a new era saying that network as a service.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We were never offering that. Network as a service is a big change from how we operated. We always have given our assets or our equipments on a return of the value immediately. Now we are comfortable saying that network as a service would be our next offer. And it's a very, very difficult transition. And I don't think not many in the industry have done that.
Super. Thanks for that, Johnson. And on that note of the value added services, Ganesh, it's at the core of a lot of what you're driving at Voice. So would love to hear some examples of how you're seeing the center actually really come up with these intelligent solutions. If you could give us some examples that one can relate to, that will be fantastic.
Sure, Shalini. So as we all know, so this whole GCC thing, as I said at the start, all started with this thing of being a very operations backend oriented thing. And then over a period of time, we evolved into providing more value. So if I talk some examples of what kind of value added services we do provide. So if you see the BI analytics space, right? So the big data, BI analytics. So previously, I don't think any GCC would have even aspired to provide services like a data scientist or a big data analyst or whatever it is, right? So today, many of the GCCs from offshore are able to provide those kind of roles, which is a big advantage and support to the onshore organization, because these roles, these skills don't come easily, whether it is US, Europe, or any other country. So they have to spend a fortune to get these skills, right? And these are not one or two ad hoc services that we provide. So this also links back to my point of scaling at speed. So we are in a position today to scale, not only just scale, but scale at speed as we speak on these areas, right? So, and the other areas that we significantly contribute is, of course, on the, say, right from, so you take a product life cycle, so product, sell, build, run. So previously the focus would have been either on the build or run cycle, but today we are talking about how do we evolve a product strategy in a GCC environment, right? How do we do a competitor market intelligence and thereby build a product which fits into the market or fits into the ecosystem? Then we are talking about in terms of creating a digital sales and a digital marketing kind of capabilities inside GCC, where it is, of course, directly contributing to the top line of an organization, right? So creating a revenue, creating a margin through these services as well. So I would say, I think we have come a long way in adding value, whether it is IoT, whether it is big data analytics or sales or marketing or product strategy. And at the same time, I would just take a minute to reflect on what Johnson said, right? So it's a very valid point that partnership plays a very big role in this evolution. So no GCC actually can build everything from scratch, right? So, and it is not wise as well to reinvent the wheel all over again when there is some able partner who has a framework, who has a product available for you to partner with and then achieve your end goal. And that is where, whether it is a OEM partner or a product partner or even SI partners, right? So we strongly believe in that ecosystem. And we also strongly believe there is space for everyone to coexist and then deliver that value back to the parent organization. So previously, maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was more of a competitive threat environment. But today it is more of a coexisting value-adding environment where we are able to get it done together and then provide that value. Thereby, of course, it provides a cost saving, but it also brings in lots of thought leadership from various partners to a particular solution as well. So I think overall, the evolution has not just been in terms of what kind of roles that have moved on to GCC, but also how we have adapted and how we have executed that whole concept of evolution that we are talking about.
Got it. Thank you for that, Ganesh. And I'm going to bring up a question which I had planned for a little later on, but you've both touched upon the concept of partnerships and the ecosystem. And you view that as an imperative. In fact, Puru touched upon it also as he spoke about innovation-led models being critical for the future. And I'd like to just touch upon that in a little more. Because we've spoken about partnerships. If you all could, and Ganesh, maybe you could elaborate a little and talk us through what are some of those different kinds of partnerships you think are critical to success, because there are partnerships with vendors, there are partnerships with, and we've seen a lot happen with the startup ecosystem where there are new ideas being infused into organizations all the time. There is academia in terms of future research. And then, of course, I'm keen to understand if some of your as large capability centers also partner. Do you think there's partnership possible at a platform level within GCC's peer-to-peer? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Ganesh, and then we'll kind of pass that question around.
Sure. So I think all the partnerships that you spoke about, I think all the permutation combinations are possible, and it is very much required, right? So maybe 5-7 years down the line before this evolution, probably if I take an example of a platform ownership, right? So I think that was never even in the radar or never in the aspiration of a GCC to own a platform. So GCC was always a user of a platform to provide, whether it is operational service or whatever it is. But today we are talking about, okay, can I own the run train of development of the platform itself, right? So I may have a product owner running that entire platform, deciding what features should go, which release. So thereby dictating the future of the whole product journey itself, platform journey itself, right? So that is the kind of maturity and seriousness that has come into the current GCC setups as we speak. The other one that I can think about is, so I was talking about, say, digital sales and digital marketing, right? So these are like we run campaigns. So to whether it is enterprise customers or consumer customers, we do run very targeted specific campaigns to those customers. So these campaigns, insights, how do you get these insights? These insights come from the data, right? So the data becomes a core part of everything that we do today, right? So that becomes, so how do we build that data store, or how do we build that data platform, and how do we basically derive insights from that data? And that is where all this AI models and machine learning algorithms and all these comes in. So should we aspire to build our own AI models and machine learning algorithms? My would be no, because that is not our core capability. And that is where you partner with somebody who brings in those capability of, so, okay, what are those AI models that they have, and whether it makes sense for the campaigns that we do, etc. That is where the product or the model framework comes into picture. And therein, to integrate this model with the existing, say, the data store that we have, either the GCC could do it themselves, or they can bring in SI partner in picture who can bring all these, connect the dots and put in a solution as well.
Yeah.
So this is the entire ecosystem and journey that we are in, where we might have been dreaming maybe 10 years before, but we are living it today in terms of the maturity and the evolution that we are in.
Yeah, so rightly said. We are really living some of these wishful thinking we've seen over the past years. Fantastic. Johnson, do you want to add some incremental examples to what Ganesh just spoke about?
Yeah, I think Ganesh talked about the product development fully owned from the GCC here. We did develop a product completely from India. So one of the signs of a successful transition of a GCC is, do you have a product marketing team here locally, which essentially means that you are listening to the customer locally. Usually in the first stage of your evolution, you won't have a product marketing team here. They would be in the headquarters. But the moment the product marketing team comes here, they work with sales team and they start listening to the local customers. So we developed a full-blown product for India as a market, which is very, very unusual. And to be everybody's surprise, that product started selling all over the world. We sold that product more than what we sold in India, even though that is built for India. So that is number one. And then if you look at some of the billion-dollar platform, the record-selling platforms of Cisco, the complete software is developed in Bangalore, entire software of that product. And you know, the entire manufacturing of some of this product happens in Asia Pacific. We started a manufacturing center in Pune, all our commitment to that ecosystem. Second, how are we partnering, to your question, Shalini, how are we partnering and how are we fueling the innovation engine? So there are multiple ways we do it. One is Cisco Capital. Cisco Capital is someone who provide the money and support for small scale company to come up, right? We provide capital on agreement, and you are very familiar with the capital model. The other one is our partnership with industry bodies like NASSCOM. So NASSCOM plus Cisco plus academia have opened up a research project, and I am in the board of that, and we invited all of the academia plus Cisco plus NASSCOM together offering project for the research students to come and do it with Cisco. There's another one is called the Cisco Launchpad. The Launchpad is a startup acceleration center. We have done 4 or 5 of them. Each Launchpad will have around 10 or 20 different startups who can use Cisco's facility and our thought leadership and some of our IPs to build their platform and nurture it. So we consider it as, and of course we talked about the university relationship on how we partner with various academia. We invested in IITs and IIScs and all of them with our labs, and we try to influence the curriculum to enhance to the latest and greatest. So in nutshell, from where Ganesh said, building a product, having the industry partnership with the bodies like NASSCOM, then Cisco Capital to invest, and then the Launchpad for companies to come and work on our platform. So there are multifaceted for our approach to that, the local market and innovation engine.
That's great. I think you've touched upon some critical enablers to keep this innovation theme going. And I love the concept of innovating in the East for the West. May there be many, many more of such products that we can take out globally. And I'm going to come to you, Puru. Puru, from a perspective of both the whole convergence theme, you touched upon some of what you are experiencing, but playing it, and I'd love for you to give perspectives from both sides, working for those who want the innovation to those who are driving the innovation. How do you see this coming together, and what are you experiencing, Puru?
Actually, when Ganesh and Johnson were actually discussing, they've already covered very beautifully how the respective organizations are working with startups and their imperatives. I think the way I'm seeing it, and and to achieve the vision of network as a service model, which Johnson spoke about, which is very, very important. I think there are 4 important areas that we might have to look at. When it comes to cloud, just to give everyone a view, the cloud market cloud market is roughly in the range of around 230 odd billion, of which the telco cloud market is less than 2%. And the reason is that telcos have not effectively utilized the capability and capacity of cloud for the larger benefit of their end customers. And that's one area where I see the role of GCCs to actually work in a cohesive environment for the larger parent organization, for all their group companies to actually come up with multiple products and solutions. There are still, the telco cloud is still evolving from just being a capability where you transfer a lot of activities into cloud, which is infrastructure as service, to how do we expand that to SaaS, PaaS, BaaS, or any of the other models that are also becoming popular. So that's number one. Second is, to harness the capability or the vision that Ganesh spoke about, which is, how do we effectively use digital marketing? After all, digital marketing will thrive on data, and data has to make sense. So one of the great initiatives that can be driven by GCC is to come up and support the larger BI analytics or IT or any of the practices that actually own data, to come up with a common data model which may be relevant to the businesses, which could be on the enterprise side, the B2C side, or any of them. So the second one is on the common data model. The third important area is specifically in the area of, Ganesh spoke about AI models that are getting built. That's very, very important. So if I were to combine the 2 points that I mentioned, cloud versus data models, there is a dying need for actually not only utilizing the capabilities of cloud, but also to come up with a larger user base on which some of these models are created, tested, and actually tried on certain customers. Both Johnson and Ganesh cover a segment of customers, which is enterprise business, is extremely, their needs and the solutions that actually service them are extremely dynamic. So these models have to evolve, and if it comes in from the GCC, what best can, what else would the parent company expect? It's a wonderful thing to actually penetrate. And the last one I wanted to actually mention was there is also a growing need for harnessing the power of edge computing. Johnson spoke about how IoT is being effectively utilized, but on the edge computing side, telcos own only one part of the whole ecosystem, and it is very important that telcos actually collaborate with equipment manufacturers and the larger ecosystem, and that's where the concept of partnerships will come in. Now, these partnerships cannot be just an alliance where you come up with a small revenue share and you white label certain areas. You will have to co-create certain products where the devices will be manufactured by someone, the connectivity will be provided by someone, the AI models that go into the operating model of that particular device will have to be managed through the cloud ecosystem, which will again be managed by GCCs. So there's a far-reaching impact of what we are talking about when it comes to creation of products and solutions, and that's where the next 3 years will see GCCs evolve to actually capture some of these requirements.
Thank you for that, Puru. Yes, Johnson, please go ahead.
Yeah, and finally, the best indication of we are successfully doing it is the number of patents we file from this region.
Yeah.
Right. While we did all of these things, we have created hundreds of patents fully owned and developed from here. That is an indication of how successful and how far we have come in terms of the maturity models on the GCCs. Yeah.
Yeah, and may that just be the beginning, I hope, because there's so much more to come. In fact, Puru spoke about the cloud model, about data structures and data models, and some of that pulling together and driving the innovation, including harnessing the power of edge computing. Some great themes, which I think really makes this for the beginning of a model that one is really going to see churning out a lot more innovation, collaboration. Over the last few minutes, we've touched upon so many different aspects of this very collaboration and what that is getting us to. In fact, per a recent Forrester study, KPMG Forrester study that we did, we do know that about 33% of digital transformation leaders are really focusing on developing newer channels to serve the customer. Ganesh, you also spoke about customer being at the fulcrum of what one is pivoting around to drive this innovation. We do know Vodafone uses Data Edge as a channel to target SME segments. Tell us a little more about this very initiative. What have you seen as advantages of it over the traditional conventional models? A good use case of some of what we've been talking about.
Sure. I think this whole concept of channels, I think, has come up. One size doesn't fit all, right? So if I talk about the enterprise space that we are in for Vodafone, so you see two or three different segments of customers. So one is, of course, the large corporate and MNCs, and the large corporations that you have. And then the second is, of course, the small, medium enterprises that you have. And the last but not the least is, which is very coming up very fast, is the SOHO, the small office, home office kind of segments that we have, right? So whether it is product or whether it is channel, I think we can't have a uniform standard thing which fits all of these 2 or 3 different segments. So we need to look at what is the dynamics of each of these segments, how much they are ready to spend and what value they want to derive out of it, right? And that is where these newer channels come into place. And say traditionally we would have had a web channel or a voice channel or a chat and various other things that we had. And today we are talking about expanding those channels. At the same time, I would like to bring one more point wherein we are converging some of the channels as well. So we are getting into a more of an omni-channel kind of experience. So wherein we don't want to confuse the customer with too many options available. So now the whole theme is all about simplicity. So if you go into any mobile app or any app for that matter, I think off late you see a very simple interface, only 2 or 3 options available for the customer, and thereby enabling it. And we are also driving toward more of a self-serve kind of capability, right? So we want customers not to come to us for traditional transactional queries. So we want customers to opt for a self-serve, where all this is not easy, but we need to enable through the digital transformation, through the platform, through the products that we have, right? So we may have all the necessary elements in place, but the biggest challenge that we had maybe 5, 7 years, 10 years before was we were not owning those products, we were not owning those platforms, so we didn't know how to connect the dots of all these things. But today we are in a position where we are owning these platforms, owning these products, and we are able to bring them all together and show a one view to a customer. So through an omni-channel or a self-care option and other things. And so I would say, I think newer channels are coming up. At the same time, I think it is also many of the channels are converging into an omni-channel kind of a space. And we are also driving towards more of a self-care option for the customer, which is making a win-win situation for both the customer as well as the GCC or the parent company piece.
Absolutely, Ganesh. And speaking from a customer point of view, I know life is getting easier and easier with a very demanding, sophisticated buyer at the other end, because this convergence is only going to get to another level altogether because customers are demanding that. And to what you spoke of earlier with GCCs, having that platform ownership with all the innovation we spoke about, I think the GCC's role in terms of driving this, further enhancing customer experiences is very critical. In fact, speaking of, I mean, we're today sitting, each of us in our respective homes, getting onto this format. I remember, Johnson, when I first saw Cisco's telepresence many years ago, I was just super impressed by it. From there, and I know Cisco has been a pioneer in terms of the remote enablement model. What do you have to say when you look at what the last 8 months has done? And I can't imagine what it's done to your WebEx business and so on, but would love to hear your quick comments on that.
Shalini, I remember the telepresence, and then we have dedicated a full room. We still have those rooms in Cisco offices where you could see a live image of someone. And where we are today, everyone can see their own live images using a better technology. And Cisco, and if you look at what happened, like Ganesh said, the service providers have played a crucial role. It's all about the bandwidth, and it's all about how the experience is. It's not the front end. It is also behind the screen, how we provide the bandwidth, how we provide the service, all those. Now for Cisco, since you asked about what happened in the last 8 months, we practically had to move 200,000 people in a week of time from working from office to working from home.
Yeah.
And several others, including you, probably have moved to your home. And the magic work behind the screen is what we have done with the service providers, with players like Cisco for several years, preparing for it, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, this would have been not possible. So coming back to the point which Ganesh made about how the business models are changing for us. Cisco is a partner-led business model. We sell through our partners. Predominantly 80% of our selling is through our channel partners, and we are one of the most elaborate partner ecosystem across the world.
Yeah.
For the GCCs, how they add the value to the bigger product development is through the feedback. Yeah. How are we able to connect the feedback from the local market and channelize it to the product development, whether it is happening here or somewhere else? So we have something called Cisco on Cisco. The Cisco on Cisco, we have large enterprise customers like KPMG or Infosys or Wipro. Several of them have rolled out our product, and they are also our partner. They are also not selling to us, they are buying from us. And those feedback comes back to us. So the Cisco on Cisco is one of our major initiative, and you would be surprised to hear the first launch of a Cisco product predominantly happens in Building 17 of Bangalore. Not even anywhere else, not even in our San Jose headquarters. The reason being, Building 17 in India, Bangalore, is the highest density building across all the campuses of Cisco in the world. So if you roll out a product for an enterprise, you have 7,500 active tough users in that building who can give you feedback live. So our latest 2 or 3 products when we rolled out, we did a beta on that building, and the users have given feedback, and we had hundreds of defects found in that beta. So what I'm saying is sometimes the economy of masses comes into play with our GCC. So we have gone that far in terms of getting the feedback and then feeding back to the development cycle. So just wanted to add that as a point,
Sure.
because that is very important aspect of our overall ecosystem and product development.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to, and it's fascinating to see how you're leveraging that model and looking at your base to actually get that feedback loop built in and kind of continuously, constantly improvise on it. In the interest of time, I'm going to move to a couple of very different sections and would go through this very rapidly, almost in a rapid fire format. But I'm keen to, we've spoken so much about innovation, technology, convergence. I'm very keen to hear from you as to how prepared do you think we are in terms of our workforces to continue to sustain and drive this innovation? We've gotten to where we are today. Is this what's going to take us into the future? Very quick, brief responses from each of you, please. Ganesh, Johnson, Puru, please.
Sure. So I think I would say the foundation or the ingredients that are required to take us to the future is there. So
Okay.
I strongly believe in that because I see there is a very strong connect between the curriculum in the universities as well as the industries that we work on. And Johnson also spoke about the academia, the collaboration with various institutions as well, right? So are we there 100%? No. So we are not there 100%. So it is again going to be like the evolution that we had in the GCC. I think this part of availability of skills and cross-skilling, training, and all these things need to basically speed up and match up to the expectations of the industry. But I think as a government, I think our honorable Prime Minister also is taking lots of initiatives in terms of bringing those big changes in basically the education system and as well. And we also are seeing lots of changes from the OSP and other things, which I think we will speak about in the coming section. So wherein it is giving us the flexibility to operate in terms of availability of skills and resources. Overall, I'd say we are prepared, and I don't think we should be too much worried about it. But I think we need to speed up our actions in terms of reaching wherever we need to be in next 5 years' time.
Sure. Thanks, Ganesh. Johnson?
Yeah, I think as a technology sector workforce, we are very much there from a competency and preparation point of view. Having said that, I'm thinking that every 5 years, being an engineer in any other engineering field, there are theories and practicals which are there forever. In our industry, it changes in every 5 years. So there are some of these latest technologies. I will just spell it out: IoT, 5G, Wi-Fi 6, blockchain, DevSecOps. I don't think we do teach any of these things in our universities, right? And that I see as a challenge. It is not because it is not only here, it is not even in US. If you look at the two technology centers in San Francisco or here, I go both the places in colleges to teach. Neither places we do have this in the curriculum. And what we are working in the industry today is on this latest and greatest technologies, which were there not 5 years back, right? Yeah. So I think there, to Ganesh's point, I agree. In India, we are seeing a great focus from the government towards this industry, and especially some of the regulations are very, very positive, welcoming aspect. It will be our strategic advantage if we can influence the academia also with some of this aspect. That's my viewpoint.
Sure. Puru, any quick comments on this?
Yeah, I frankly feel that a lot of workforce that currently exists within not only, I'll probably talk largely in the telecom industry itself has been focusing on traditional technologies. But now the future is going to be software-driven technologies, which are on new schools of thought, which I agree with Johnson has not been taught historically. But that will require the not only the technology skill of the organization, but also what does the customer need? So innovation cannot be done in isolation. According to me, whichever skill set we want our employees to develop will have to be tested through from a customer lens, whether it's relevant or not. Currently, there are two areas of improvement that will be specifically required, both from a telecom perspective, or when I say operator perspective, and also from a GCC perspective, is to first understand the new technologies and its not only importance and relevance to how products are going to get created, because products are not going to be created in isolation. It's not going to be just connectivity products. It's going to have a bundle of user experience. It will have omni-channel, as Ganesh spoke about. It will have to be understood by the employees very well, and that currently certainly doesn't exist. Not only as a curriculum course, but also as a product orientation course, or sales orientation course for employees. employee skill sets have to be enhanced to cover some of the new technologies. I don't think there is enough emphasis being made on what are those that are relevant to your customers, specifically around cloud. The definition of digital keeps changing from organization to organization. What does it mean to your own customer is something that needs to get taught about. And at the same time, we speak about data and the capability of AI. AI and machine learning gets completely misunderstood. And even the basic concepts around how do we differentiate that and how do we effectively use that in a client scenario is something that needs to be taught about. So basically, for current skills need to be upgraded. White spaces and talent need to get identified, and maybe it could start with not only the curriculum change. I think that will take a few years to change, but the new breed of talent that actually comes in should have the eagerness to actually learn and adapt these technologies. I think that so there'll have to be a platform that will have to get created within every organization, like an incubation center, where some of these new ideas are actually brainstormed with students, and the innovation platform actually helps them to co-create this. And eventually, there are concepts around digital badging and few others that are getting explored by every organization. That will be a very competitive way of actually improving the skill sets of the employees as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Puru. And I think the one thing I can certainly say is I think the younger generation and the new grads are very cognizant of the fact that they have to constantly keep their skills relevant, and they need to upskill, lest they run the risk of getting redundant. So I think it's no longer so much of a push one needs to do from a learning perspective. There is certainly a pull out there because of the recognition that if you've got to be relevant, you have to be on the top of this and understand all of these new technologies which are changing at a very rapid pace. As we work towards bringing this session to a close, I have two questions which I want each of you to respond to, almost like the rapid fire in our tele shows. The first one really is, if you had one ask of the government, of the regulators, that is going to further enable the environment in the backdrop of having just gone through and seen the new DOT OSP changes and what that's allowing, what are, if there is that one other ask, what would that be? Very briefly, please. Johnson?
Yeah, I think I must thank the government for doing a wonderful job during this pandemic, and especially with this regulation. Cisco has been working with companies like Vodafone or Airtel or everybody to make that happen, and government very promptly responded, and that made everybody's life very simple. And we have expanded our reach into every homes from the four walls of the office.
So one other ask, Johnson, from the government.
No, all I ask is to continue to listen to the industry bodies, work together. That makes it much better.
Sure. Yeah, great one. Ganesh?
Okay, so maybe I would have two asks, Shalini, quickly.
Yeah.
In the sense, I think we still need to make kind of setting up a GCC in India is still a challenge for many of the organizations. So whichever are set up earlier probably are matured. But if you talk about setting up, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is getting approvals, etc., I think still there is a long way to go. So we need to make ease of business happen. So that's definitely one of the asks that I would have. And of course, the other one is in terms of connecting the industry with the academia or the universities, so which today happens at the behest of the organization. So we take those initiatives, go to the universities, or universities take that initiatives, come to us. But there I feel there needs to be a more structured framework in terms of enabling these two things to come together very strongly in a very formal and integrated manner. I think that will add a value to this whole ecosystem itself.
Super, some great points there. Yeah, absolutely. Puru, anything from your side?
Yeah, just one add-on point. The data privacy regulations are still something that, from an India perspective, is something that will require more clarity and confirmation. I think there are a few initiatives that are drawn around that are planned. If that is expedited, it will be wonderful to align to the global standards. So that's one important point. And from a industry perspective, the digital infrastructure ecosystem is not yet fully enabled, and there are a lot of brilliant initiatives that have been taken by the government. The NDCP 2018 was a wonderful initiative, and a lot of programs are being driven through that. The ease of doing business has improved, but as Ganesh said, it will have to get understood in pockets. So like work from home was a very dying problem, which was actually tackled very nicely by not only telecom operators, but also the entire technology ecosystem and industry bodies. Similarly, others are also getting addressed. It will have to get expedited for sure.
Cool. No, thank you. Some good points there for us to kind of figure ways and means to bring up to the right attention of authorities. Thank you for that. And as we bring this session to a wrap, I'd like your one-word response to, if there is one risk that keeps you awake, being at the helm of all of this technology, innovation, evolution, what is that one risk that you believe needs addressing? Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I'll take a shot. Probably availability of certain skills at scale, right? So today we may be able to recruit niche skills, but it may be in some ones and twos and other things. But I think we need to industrialize it, and that is where the connection with the universities and the academic thing happens. So availability of skill at scale is sometimes the biggest worry for me. So whenever we want to commit something to set up a COE or whatever we want to set up in the GCC.
Yeah, we experience that too. At second that, absolutely. Johnson?
Yeah, for me, I touched upon this, the demand supply widening gap. What we are producing versus what we want. Is that gap is growing much faster, and that keeps me worried.
Okay, good one. Yeah, absolutely. Puru?
For me, it is actually innovation which is very specific and relevant to a customer. So customer-centric innovation is very critical. Otherwise, we'll keep creating prototypes which may be of no use to anyone.
Cool. Thank you. Well, with that, gentlemen, I say this sadly, I'm going to have to bring this session to a wrap. I could have gone on for another hour because I had another bunch of questions that if time allowed, I would have loved to deep dive into. But I think this has been a fantastic discussion. Excuse me. Thank you again for all of the examples that you all have shared. And if I was to kind of try and summarize this whole conversation, we've touched upon, while we started with technology and telecom industries seeing convergence, I think through your examples, we saw convergence of a very different sort. Convergence within the ecosystem, bringing together not just the opportunity for GCCs to learn from one another, but we've touched upon the vendor ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, working with academia, which is fantastic. And many of you already doing a whole bunch of things in that direction. And when one looks at the capabilities you're building, for me, the takeaway of wanting to see many more GCCs in that Gartner's Magic Quadrant, I think is a fantastic outcome that one would want to see get realized, with, of course, many more East headquarters getting set up, with many other GCCs looking to transform to delivering intelligent solutions like Vodafone has. I think this is just the beginning of some very, very exciting times to come. And with all of the collaboration with the technology, which each of you know better than anyone else, I think we're really going to ride a wave ahead of growth, of innovation and collaboration that has been unprecedented. Thank you again for all of your inputs. I would just sum up by saying global capability centers are only beginning to be that integral plug-in, and they're going to be absolutely at the core driving transformation for what the future of global service delivery models are going to look like. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalini.
Thank you. Thank you, Shalini. Wonderfully hosted session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, Ganesh.